thank you for inviting me. I'm really honored to be here with you. And I really wish next year there will be the opportunity to be there in New York City all together and celebrate the overcome of the pandemic. But anyway, it's very good to be here now. So I start this talk related to critical thinking in professional development contexts, and very glad that we had this first introduction related to law and to the law environment, where critical thinking is central, I think, for lawyers to have to be good critical thinkers. And also the questioning that you asked related to that part are perfectly consistent with what I'm going to tell you about, especially related to the work I'm carrying out with my research at the Department of Education, Roma Tre University. So going on, we start just defining and highlighting the aims for today. A sentence from Socrates was absolutely mandatory. The unexamined life is not worth living. So we always need to nourish our thought. And I'll tell you how we thought it's worth nourishing, feeding our thought in order to be good critical thinkers. So what are we going to do today together? First of all, understanding better the role of critical thinking and information literacy in the 21st century society, and especially in the times we are living. Presenting some ideas regarding how to improve these kind of skills, and showing the results of the research we have been carrying out within my group at Roma Tre University, especially focusing on the experience we have been conducting related to the automatization of critical thinking assessment in open-ended answers. Who we are, a brief introduction to the group I'm leading, the Center for Museum Studies, based in Roma Tre University. It is a center that was created in 1994, so the professional development context I'm in is that of heritage and museums, but always focusing on the use and on the critical use of technology within the heritage and education field. This center was created to face the insufficient use made of the huge wealth and heritage assets available in Italy at the time. Also to fill in the gap between Italy and other countries as regards cumulative knowledge and the definition of models of intervention of research in the specific field of education in order to work on new strategies through museum heritage. Here you can see some of the colleagues who are part of the group and that took active part in the research I'll be showing you during this presentation. Some of them are there. I know they registered for the conference, so they will be active in participating today. Some projects we have been working in are related to international contexts. Here you have some of the logos, in particular some that are going at the moment and that are absolutely consistent with what we have been doing and what I'm presenting today, are especially open virtual mobility, on the possibility of using technology to facilitate virtual mobility in a time where mobility is limited. Digital culture, on the possibility to develop digital skills for those employed in the field of creative industries. So especially for areas like the US, where the entertaining industry is going through a very difficult time, but in Italy as well, in most of the countries all over the world, as well, the possibility to reflect on how to develop certain digital skills is for sure a mandatory aspect. Other projects are related specifically to critical thinking, as the Critic Edu project that was ended a few months ago, related to the development of critical thinking in higher education. So this just to give you a background on our field of activity. If we focus on our research, let me start from the basis, the starting point of our research. So what did we want to do? We wanted to promote and assess thinking skills and the critical use of digital technology in a context where cultural heritage, arts, literature, supported by the use of technology, could, as I said, feed our thinking skills. We'll see in a minute how this is related and how this, for us, is a key point to underline. Why critical thinking is so critical today? First of all, as you can see from these documents, critical thinking has always been considered an essential driver for progress, development, and knowledge growth. But if you just compare two documents, two reference documents from the OECD, from the World Economic Forum and UNESCO, others, you can see that critical thinking raised to the second position in 2020, and together with creativity, complex problem solving that was, of course, there from the very beginning, is something that really we should care about. It raised in the ranking, and it's something that we need to take care of. Besides that, we have been going through unpredictable challenges. We all are experiencing this limitation due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and we can say that a relation, one of the reasons for the spread of such a pandemic could be related to technological progress in a way, for better or for worse, as I say here. I am concerned about a specific kind of relation between the COVID-19 and the information overload we are all experiencing. Actually, we have been experiencing this kind of information overload for long in the last few years, and there's an actual difficulty, cognitive difficulty in human beings to cope with this information overload. That is why also the World Health Organization took into consideration this big amount of information produced, and they created a new term, a new word to define this kind of information overload. That is the infodemic. So infodemic, as you can see here, is an overabundance of information. Some are accurate, some not. That makes it hard for us to find trustworthy sources. And it's true that if we can't get the proper information related, for example, to the pandemic, this kind of harm can, of course, be related also to health issues. So that is why the WHO took into serious consideration the problem of information overload. The issue is related, of course, to the danger of misinformation during the management of virus outbreaks. Because, of course, if I don't get in the dimension, if I'm not able to pick up the information in the right way, I can be harmful for myself and for the others. So that's a huge issue. There are different kinds of mis or disinformation. Some are identified here. There's a link, so if you want to know more about each of them, each category, you can have a look for sure. Some are, if you read it, you can surely identify kind of misunderstanding and disinformation we can get from the various sources of information we get through. This is a way to understand the problem and to start, different kind of actions to face the problem. There are other sources that highlight the difficulty we could be experiencing. For instance, there's one poll by YouGov and Economist in March 2020 that said that 13% of Americans believe that the COVID-19 crisis was a hoax, and 49% believe the epidemic might be man-made. The New York Times again reported that several videos featuring the Gates conspiracy have been viewed over 160,000 times on TikTok. So there are different evidence regarding the difficulty of getting information and, protect ourselves and the others from, more difficult situations. This is, a reference to US sources of information, but this is true all over the world. In Italy, we have even worse data. So what should we learn? We need to develop what we call antibodies to be prepared to understand which are the correct, which information should be trusted and which information should not be trusted. And critical thinking and information literacy are actually antibodies that can really help us face the difficult situation we are living. But let's focus on critical thinking and let's try to understand what is critical thinking. Critical thinking is a complex construct. So we can't, in fact, for this reason, many researchers have been studying critical thinking and have been working on trying to focus on a shared definition, but it's very difficult to get one. What we can for sure say is that critical thinking is the combination of different skills and dispositions. So analyze, evaluate, make inference, argument, being open-minded, being skeptical, being inquisitive are all different sides of a same object. If we take one definition, this one from McPeck, for instance, where he says that critical thinking is a process where an interaction occurs between individuals and the interpretation of knowledge which they contribute to create, we see that in this definition, both internal cognitive activities and disposition to act in a critical, social, and interactive way in order to interpret and create knowledge is mentioned. And as you can see here, this definition gives us the possibility to link to digital literacy, because a great amount of information, but we were mentioning it in the previous slide, happens online. And the situation online compels us to being able to be interactive, but at the same time being able to interpret and create a new knowledge. The information is there. We need to be able to pick up information we need, actually. So the link, as I was saying, from critical thinking to information literacy is very, very close. Of course, when you read a text, when you read to collect information, both on paper or online, of course, there are similar skills implied. But as regards online texts, often pose greater challenges to readers than printed text. That is, again, proved by different researches. Here One research from the OECD is mentioned and quoted. The OECD produced different kinds of documents related to issues and problems and effects of reading online. There are also many other sources that you can access to if you are interested. Anyway, reading online has different characteristics. First of all, the multimodality and the presence of hyperlinks. So if you don't have a sequential text, you are more challenged. And there are different issues related to text processing and the simultaneous activity of navigating the internet that imply different kind of skills stimulated at the same time, which anyway put the subject in a different situation. So it's absolutely clear that critical thinking is linked to information literacy. How can we define digital information literacy? Some authors summarize digital literacy as a combination of concrete and unquantifiable skills. If you have a look at this figure, you see that there are different areas at play, different dimensions: the technological, the cognitive, the ethical. And the cognitive and the technological, you see, are very much connected, because you need to access, to select, to have a critical evaluation of information. At the same time, you have to explore new technological contexts in a flexible way. Let's say that flexibility and this ability to move free, with a certain speed from one dimension to the other is absolutely vital. Again, if we go deeper, the understanding of information literacy skills, you can see how the connection with critical thinking is again reproduced and underlined. There are some indicators like defining, accessing, managing, integrating, evaluating, creating, communicating, that are perfectly linked and consistent with what we do when we try to define and to assess critical thinking skills. Of course, everything is related to some main actions like interpretation, like interpreting, like judging, like adapting, like designing, and those are all actions that we use when we train our critical thinking skills. Now, in order to let you understand and play a little bit, be a little bit more interactive and understand what we are talking about, because it's early morning for you in the US, maybe it's afternoon or evening for others attending, and we need to be live. I would like to ask you some little questions. I don't know if okay, the questions are put on the poll section, so you can answer them. I'll wait a little bit to let you answer. Here we have. I don't want to be silent. Very interesting. Very interesting to see the answers. We need to give you the time to answer. Of course, now you know that you need to be focused. So So Emily's father has 3 daughters. The first 2 are named April and May. What is the third daughter's name? If you're running a race and you pass the person in second place, what place are you in? All the marathons have been cancelled, so you need to imagine what would it be to run? Okay, so I think I can go on and tell you you're quite good thinkers. I wanted to wait just a little bit because the third question maybe is a little bit it takes a little bit more time to be answered. So you need to click on the link. But I think I can move on just to let you know that, as you can see here, question 1, you see the first 2 are named April and May. What is the third daughter's name? Emily. But again, as you can see, this is as regards question 1 and question 2, those are related to cognitive reflection tests, and they are related to critical thinking dispositions. And question 3 instead is the Web-Trotter information literacy related to goal-oriented navigation, and the answer was Japan. We are quite good thinkers here, but of course I had no doubt about that. But you can realize how we could be tricked by certain kind of information, and if we don't reflect properly, we can give very superficial answers, and we can get wrong getting the information. Anyway, this kind of questions could be used, of course, in the development and in the process of enhancement of critical thinking skills. But let's go to our research and see how we can develop information literacy and critical thinking skills. Of course, social interaction and language are fundamental tools for the development of higher order cognitive skills. So that's where our study started, actually. So we focused especially on deep reading, so literary texts, deep reading in a wide sense, conceived in a wide sense. So when we talk about deep reading, we refer to literary texts, so texts that have a literary dimension, but also pieces of art, museums, objects, and artifacts. So this kind of reading has different dimensions, different point of views. Writing as, again, another important and relevant function in what we do when we try to develop and enhance information literacy and critical thinking skills. So essays, object-based learning, digital storytelling are different ways, again, of writing and building knowledge artifacts. We don't have to think of writing as only the actual way of, using our hand and putting down ideas. Dialogic interactions, so both online and offline, of course, always quoting Socrates. But there are other institutions, big institutions, actually, US institutions like the Smithsonian, where these ideas have been explored and supported, actually. By the way, the Smithsonian is one of the institutions we cooperate with as a Center for Museum Studies. So they worked actually with the World Health Organization to educate on COVID-19, and they reflected on this possibility of, and actually they produced different kinds of activities related to the idea of reflection, working, and deep reading, as we meant. Online dialogic interactions, especially as asynchronous online discussions, can support critical thinking and knowledge co-construction, even more than synchronous face-to-face discussions. due to the available time for reflection, the possibility to being more critical, constructive, and give more explicit contributions. This idea has been explored also by another US institution we cooperate with, that is the National Gallery of Art based in Washington. And I can anticipate you, if you are interested, that we are going to have a webinar based on what they have been doing related to online dialogic interactions to develop critical thinking skills, hosted and promoted by the US Embassy in Rome, in Italy, with some representatives of the educational department that promoted the course How to Think, how to develop critical thinking skills through art, based, of course, at the National Gallery of Washington collection. So, what was the challenge we really wanted to be engaged in? That is the assessment challenge, because as we said, there are different institutions, the National Gallery, the Smithsonian, other kind of institutions, ourselves as well, who worked on developing and supporting critical thinking skills through different strategies. But something that we really need to explore and to experiment is how to assess critical thinking skills in the right way, effectively, with data that can prove that that kind of activity is effective or not. As we said, we know that the online discussions and activities could be designed to promote both critical thinking and information literacy, but how to monitor these activities, how to assess them, especially when we are based in massive courses. We have been working, in fact, with massive open online courses or big classrooms, where, as the theme of our conference say, large amounts of data are to be processed. So, as we all know, those who are enrolled to this conference, learning analytics focuses on extracting meaning from large amounts of data, and educational data mining adapts statistical, machine learning, and data mining methods to study educational data generated basically by students and instructors. So there's the possibility, actually different researchers, different institutions tried to start the validation of automatic tools for the assessment of critical thinking sub-skills, such as reasoning and argumentation, but many challenges are there in terms especially of validity and reliability of the measures. It's a real nightmare, I can tell you. What we have been doing within our research group, we tried to develop a prototype to assess automatically 6 sub-skills of critical thinking. And those are use of the language, argumentation, relevance, importance, critical evaluation, and novelty. In a minute, I will tell you how we build the rubric to evaluate this kind of sub-skills. Different tools have been developed to assess one or the other of those skills, but the idea is instead here to have a prototype that can evaluate the whole set together based on the use of natural language processing techniques. Our first research questions was related to how reliable it is when using NLP approach to evaluate and score critical thinking related sub-skills, and whether this reliability is comparable to the case when human judgment is employed. As you can imagine, this is a very difficult challenge. And as you will see, we have been working on different kinds of data. The analysis of some data is still in process, is going on, but the challenge is a top level one. So I was telling you about the macro indicators that the system we would like to produce should be able to. So use of the language, I was telling you, justification, argumentation, relevance, importance, critical, evaluation, and novelty. We're running out of time, so I don't want to read the whole components of the macro indicators. Just to let you know that, as you can see, we want to understand through written text, of course, and I will tell you more about different kind of exercises that we administered in order to get this text from the users, are related, of course, to language ability. So the possibility to write correctly in a certain language is important to give the idea of the organization of thought, the elaboration ability, the consistency, the knowledge of the topic, of course, personal and critical elaboration of sources and background, the possibility to produce new information, ideas, solutions added to discuss the issues raised in the question. Of course, we are in an open-ended context, so we needed to limit our grading in order to give marks in a the most sounded way we could. And as you might imagine, in an automatic situation, this is even harder, of course. So how did we work? First of all, we collected some feedback from a number of colleagues at different occasions on different workshops in the US, in Italy, and in Belgium. So during different workshops, we focused on critical thinking. We asked to answer different kinds of constructed response questions, and we collected those that feedback, and we analyzed that in a first experimentation in 2019. Then a second step, which is in progress, included 200 university students from Italy, and each one was asked to read an extract from Galilei's book Dialogue on the Two Chief World Systems and write an essay based on 5 questions. Again, you can question related to the topic of the essay, that is Galilei's book. But as I said, the main characteristics of the text we want to use as a source to develop critical thinking should have always been collected to culture and heritage. So being it a work of art, or so a picture or a piece of literary work, but the cultural aspect must have been underlined ever. So we had these two sources of information. We worked with human assessors who rated the responses collected in both steps and provided ratings on each of the 6 sub-skills. As I said, from a minimum of 1 to a maximum of 5 as a marking rate. The same open-ended answers then were assessed by the prototype, the automatic prototype, through different kind of methodologies. Here you have a figure that summarizes what we did. I'm running a bit, but I want to reach the end of the presentation, and if you have questions, we have time to answer them. I really would like to have you interact with me related to what I presented. So we, as you can see from this table, we tried to improve our prototype from the first version to the second version that is under, testing in actually these very days. And as you can see, we improved different categories. Use of the language, as you might imagine, is in a way to detect What is not so easy is the connection and finding the connections the prototype is trying to work on between use of the language and the different categories that you can see in our rubric. So misspelling and grammatical errors, frequency of words, lexical diversity, but also the possibility to distinguish discourse categories, checking tense verbs, polarity, and arguing lexicon. Latent semantic analysis to detect relevance, intelligent essay assessor to detect importance, novelty through latent semantic analysis, and term frequency inverse document frequency. Critical evaluation, as you might imagine, is the most difficult one, but we are, of course, working on that too. Here you have a synthesis of what we did and of the different parallel ways of experiencing our research in the first kind of prototype and the second kind of prototype. What I want to drive your attention to is data collection, because we used free open-ended questions in the first kind of analysis, and we used also other kind of exercises related to paraphrases, comments, and analysis starting from literature texts. And in the second experimentation, which is in progress, as I was telling you, we carried out and we asked to write essays based on 5 open-ended questions. Again, we analyzed those texts by two expert evaluators and the prototype to see the correlation. And of course, we carried out also correlation tests in order to understand the correlation measures. Results. Of course, as I was telling you, analyses are under issue at the moment, but you can see that a correlation is shown from moderate to high correlation depending on the macro indicator. What we can see here, you can see there's that in these graphics, you can see the parallel between different macro indicators, the human rater and the prototype. There is a lot to do still, that's for sure, but we can say that the prototype is really improving, and the differences between the average scores, for instance, for the use of the language scores and novelty are quite low. So it means that we are getting there slowly, but we are getting there. As regards inter-rater reliability, the rubric for critical thinking assessment shows good properties with satisfactory reliability between two human. The best correlation among human raters and critical thinking prototype 1.0, the first one, were obtained for the macro indicators relevance in the commentary and importance both in the paraphrase and commentary. However, the overall reliability could not be considered yet, as I was telling you. If we need to, have a synthesis of what we have done so far, we can say that for sure human raters tend to assign higher scores than our prototype as regards the commentary. So as regards the exercise where participants are asked to be more productive. On the other hand, in the paraphrase, the prototype assigned higher scores than human raters on the macro indicators of relevance and importance. And this result could be explained because the prototype is designed to infer concepts from the questions and answer tests. In the paraphrase, participants are required to report all the text topics, and in this condition, the prototype easily identifies all the concepts without the need of further analysis. So, of course, the machine needs to be structured in a certain way in order to get the best results. We are working, as I told you, But early findings suggest that an NLP approach appears to have a lower level of rating quality than human raters. More research, of course, is necessary to explore features and possibilities to improve such rating quality in the future. It is hard work. As I said, it is a real challenge, but we can say that this system supports the users for sure from this very moment, the human users, I mean. And it could be really a consistent and relevant upgrade in the evaluation and detection of critical thinking skills and support of critical thinking skills and digital information skills. I can say that if we start integrating in our teaching, learning, and training activities, as we do with our museum educators who take our courses, and we organize our activities integrating, as I was saying, critical thinking as one of the main teaching and learning and training objectives. Also, the assessment part can be more consistent and help us develop our objectives. And technology and technological tools, prototypes like the one we are working on, can be a strong impulse to development and growth, and especially to limit the risks we are all living this time. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm here for your questions. I think we have a few moments to devote to questions. And here you have also a series of references you can access to, but if you're interested, I can give you even more. So thank you again for your attention. Thank you, David. I wanted to go back to Socrates. That is our leading image.
Okay, thank you so much, and we can put Socrates back on the screen for the questions. So we'll give people a second to, if you've got questions, please just go ahead and put them in the chat, or if you want us to call on you, we can do that too, which you have to, I think, tell us in the chat. So see if there are questions coming in through the chat, and while we're talking about that, while we're waiting for other questions to come in. Antonella, can you speak a little bit about your thoughts on what, we talked about we learned about the prototype and how it analyzes things and compares to human raters, but we also talked about the idea that people might need to get a little bit better at thinking critically, that they often make mistakes. Can you sort of give us a little more on your overview on what we might want to do to help build critical thinking in sort of the big picture sense, so that when people go to the news sites, they really know what they're doing.
Yeah, in fact, you mentioned the keywords. What we should help people do is question themselves. And being critical doesn't necessarily mean to be difficult. Because sometimes we misinterpret ourselves the term, and we think that being critical means being difficult. Not at all. But if I go back to one of those slides related to the issue of misinterpreting facts, really the consequences are horrible. And being very, very practical, we should tell our I speak about students, but of course all those in training or whatever course they are taking should value the courses and what they're doing, also when trying to look for information. Whatever they are in a formal or informal situation, they should think, I need this information, but I need to be sure that this information is actually, first of all, what I'm looking for, and then is not created on purpose to become viral, because many lots of information that we find and that we are overwhelmed with are created on purpose to address our thinking. So if we are able to reflect and at least question ourselves and say, okay, this is what this source say, but is this source sufficiently authoritative? Is it sufficiently good for me? What is this source aiming at? So those kind of dispositions what we were talking about, the idea of being skeptical, of being inquisitive, are really important and should be taught, should be, disseminated to those who are, taking our courses. We were at the beginning talking about the low environment, and there, of course, this kind of attitude is more natural in a way, but we should think that this kind of inquisitive attitude and disposition can be really trained, can be trained in whatever setting we are based, but especially can be trained in whatever setting we are based through culture. And that helps us to develop this kind of skills.
Right. There's a question that came in from Christina, sort of about the use of the prototype. So this is, if you think about the bigger picture and where your machine works, right? Your machine reading tool will fit in. How do you see that contributing back into society? And I guess my related question to Christina is, which is kind of on my mind, is when you look at the machine and you look at the human raters, like how do you know who's better at this point, with critical thinking being a concern? So kind of, I think the question from Christina is really, how do you see the prototype as you continue to build it out, helping people then further develop critical thinking skills, teachers or other stakeholders?
That would be very helpful. And actually, Christina, if you want to know more, but actually I see Francesca Menduni, who is part of my group, and actually she's doing lots of work especially on this prototype, can tell you more, but she already mentioned one of our articles. It can be really useful because when we are in large settings, we were talking about MOOCs or, anyway, in a setting where you have large amount of data to process. Of course, human beings, as we said, and from our analysis, you can see that human raters, especially as regards critical thinking, are the best raters, but a prototype that at least could support the human rater could give a huge help to process data, to have at least a first vision of the situation, and the human rater could be very much helped in processing the data, supporting our users to be more critical, to be better thinkers. Because, of course, if you don't have the possibility to measure your level of critical thinking, you can't improve. Assessment should always, according to my opinion, assessment should always be formative, first of all. So, if we help assessors through technology and progress, I think we have development and also better thinkers.
Great. Well, thanks so much.
Sorry.
And there's so much
Christina
there.
Also wanted to know which kind of users. Of course, not only teachers at all. As I said, these kind of strategies could be used in whatever setting, being them lawyers, being architects, being engineers, being whatever. Actually, we carried out another research always related to the assessment of critical thinking, having comparison between different fields, in particular engineering and education. So if you're interested, Christina, please contact me also by mail. I can send you other other information and other articles.
Great. And maybe for next year, then we'll have the machine take the Ray and Jane
Yeah, I
poll.
will
So we'll see if we
come
can
and
connect
show
everything
you
for this conference
the
for next year.
machine. Yes, absolutely.
We'll see what it thinks Ray should do next. It may get it right. It may get it wrong.
Yeah.
I think that we're just about out of time. Antonella, thank you so much for everything this morning.
Thanks to you
Also,
always.
just to make sure everyone knows, Antonella will be back with us through the conference and for the panel tomorrow.
For your background, which I really miss. Your virtual background.
All right, good. Well, yes, I know. I hope it doesn't make you miss New York. We'll get you back here, hopefully next year, and
yeah, absolutely.
And we'll see you later in the conference in the chat, and then tomorrow on the panel as well. So,
yeah, tomorrow on the panel. I'm looking forward to meeting you all there. Thank you.